Lily Carson never expected her birthday party to become the one night she would replay in her head for weeks afterward, but trouble started long before anyone raised a glass or took a seat. The first sign came 2 weeks before the event, when she was finishing her seasonal job at a lakeside resort and counting down the days until the celebration she had been planning for 6 months. She imagined her yard filled with warm lights, 70s decorations, old-style vinyl colors, and the exact playlist she had spent hours curating on her phone. She'd saved for months to buy a powerful speaker that she felt proud of. The party mattered to her more than she realized, maybe because the past year had been exhausting, and she wanted one night that felt entirely hers. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. Her boyfriend, Josh Miller, kept telling her not to worry so much about the details. He wasn't unkind, but he didn't share her excitement either. He treated the party like something casual, a place to simply hang out with friends. Lily didn't push back because she didn't want the night to carry pressure. She just wanted people to enjoy being there. Still, the one person she was uncertain about was Josh's friend Peter Ramsey. She didn't dislike him, but she always sensed a strange undertone when he showed up. Peter had a way of turning minor moments into little competitions, especially when they involved attention or who controlled the music. Lily brushed it off as a personality quirk, but she always felt herself preparing for his energy whenever he came around. She wasn't thinking about any of that when she rushed around her backyard on the evening of the party. She had set up strands of lights, arranged tables with yellow and orange touches that matched her theme, and placed her new speaker on a small stand. Guests started arriving, greeting her with smiles, hugs, and small birthday gifts. The energy felt bright, exactly how she imagined it. Josh mingled near the grill with a few of his friends, distracted but content. Lily glanced at her watch once in a while, wondering when Peter would show up. She didn't expect his presence to matter so much, but Josh always seemed more relaxed when his closest friends were around. 2 hours passed before Peter finally came through the side gate. Lily spotted him immediately because his body language stood out. He moved with a stiff, irritated posture, not the casual stride she associated with someone showing up to a birthday party. When she approached him with a friendly hug and wished him a happy birthday, because she had learned a few days earlier that the date happened to be his, he offered a half-hearted response. Instead of smiling or showing the slightest trace of warmth, he barely acknowledged her. She stepped back, confused, not sure why he seemed annoyed so early in the night. But Lily had told herself she wouldn't let any small detail ruin this evening. She gave him space and returned to her friends, keeping her attention on the people who genuinely wanted to be there. Almost an hour later, she noticed Peter slip away toward his car parked outside the fence. She didn't think much of it until he returned carrying a massive speaker, the kind used for outdoor events or weekend gigs. It was several sizes bigger than hers, with a black panel and built-in colored lights. Without asking anyone, he placed it in the middle of the yard like a stage prop. Before Lily could even walk toward him, the entire backyard filled with thumping music. Nothing like her 70s playlist. It wasn't just different, it completely consumed the space. The lights she hung gently over the yard suddenly clashed with the heavy beats echoing from Peter's speaker. She looked at Josh, hoping he would understand how this seemed to undermine everything she planned. Josh only shrugged, saying Peter probably didn't mean anything by it. Lily didn't want to confront Peter directly, so she asked Josh to tell him gently to turn it off. After a short exchange, Peter finally powered it down, but not without tossing in a dismissive remark about how nobody liked Lily's music anyway, and how the vibe needed help. Lily stood still, unsure what to do with the comment. She didn't want the night to revolve around conflict. She wanted her friends to enjoy themselves, not witness tension between her and Peter. So she took a breath and let the moment pass. But the discomfort grew when one of her friends quietly told her what actually happened earlier. Peter had asked that friend whether the old people were gone yet, implying the party was boring, and then used that excuse to bring in his massive speaker without encouragement. It wasn't flattering, but it still wasn't enough to derail the night. What did catch Lily off guard was Josh's next comment. He'd made a joke about her new speaker dying soon. He said it in front of Peter, who smirked as though the remark validated him. Lily felt a sting she didn't expect, because she had worked extra shifts to afford that speaker. It might not have been the biggest or most expensive, but it felt like part of the night she built. Hearing Josh reduce it to a punchline made her chest tighten. 20 minutes passed before things escalated again. Peter picked up his huge speaker and motioned for several of Josh's friends to follow him to one side of the yard. Then he blasted his music again, overpowering everything Lily had set up. It wasn't subtle, it was a takeover. She went straight to Josh this time, not with anger but with a plea. She asked him to stop it because the night wasn't unfolding the way she imagined, and she felt her celebration slipping away. Josh hesitated, but eventually walked over and told Peter to shut it down again. Peter complied, but Lily felt the tension thickening in an uncomfortable way. Her guests pretended not to notice the back and forth, but the atmosphere had shifted. A few minutes later, Lily's own speaker suddenly switched tracks. She thought it was a glitch at first, but when she walked inside to reconnect it from her phone, she found Peter and another young man seated nearby. Both had their eyes on their screens. Peter's phone screen showed a music app. Lily's speaker disconnected a second time, and that was the moment she reached forward and snatched Peter's phone. He pulled back immediately, insisting he wasn't connected. But before she could respond, the friend sitting beside him muttered that Peter had told him to connect instead. The truth hung in the air like a cold draft, and for the first time that night, Lily felt something tighten inside her. Not dramatic, just firm. She didn't yell, she didn't wave her arms or make a scene, but she did tell Peter he needed to leave. The words came out steady, almost calm, but they carried the weight of everything that had built up. She even added that if he hadn't been so disrespectful, he would have been included in the cake cutting. The room went still for a moment, before Peter finally got up and walked out. She watched him go without regret, but she did notice Josh's reaction. He looked uncomfortable, embarrassed even, like he wasn't sure what to make of the situation. She didn't know whether he was embarrassed of her or the event itself. People continued enjoying the evening, but Lily's mood had changed. She tried to smile, tried to shake off the weight, but something felt off in the way Josh avoided meeting her eyes. After the guests left and the yard quieted down, Lily looked at Josh's phone when a notification popped up from Peter. She hadn't planned on reading anything, but the screen preview displayed the message clearly. Peter had written that he didn't know what her problem was, and that the whole situation was ridiculous. Josh replied that he agreed and didn't know what her deal was either. Lily read those words twice, standing in the middle of her kitchen with leftover plates still scattered across the counter. She felt something cold settle inside her. It wasn't the comment itself, it was what it revealed. The man she trusted, the one she assumed would understand how deeply she cared about creating a special night, had chosen to side with someone who had made the entire evening about himself. She didn't confront Josh then. She didn't throw accusations or demand explanations. Instead, she walked through the quiet house, collecting used cups, straightening cushions, and putting away decorations. She let the silence settle around her while she tried to figure out how the night had gone so wrong and what it meant for her relationship. Josh eventually walked in, asking whether she was okay. She nodded but didn't say much, and he didn't push. He mentioned again that he didn't want to take sides, as though the issue was simply a disagreement among friends. Lily didn't respond because she realized he had already taken a side before she ever said a word. The next morning, Lily stepped outside onto her patio. Her decorations still hung from the fence posts, but the magic she'd imagined now felt tangled. The 70s-themed banners, the lights she'd carefully placed, even her speaker. All of it reminded her of a moment she had tried to craft with love, but had been overshadowed by someone else's need to dominate the room. Josh eventually joined her, maintaining the same stance as before. He said the situation had gotten out of hand, and he didn't want drama among his friends. Lily listened without arguing. She realized that the issue wasn't about the speaker, or even the party. It was about how quickly he dismissed her feelings and validated someone who had disrespected her in her own home. She didn't repeat what she saw on his phone that night. She didn't ask him why he said what he did. Instead, she carried the realization quietly, letting it settle the way dust settles after a long night. The truth became clearer with each passing hour. Something had shifted permanently, not because of a single moment, but because of what those moments revealed. Lily spent the rest of the day cleaning the yard, folding tables, and packing away supplies she had planned months ahead. She moved at her own pace, not to distract herself, but to reclaim the space where everything had unfolded. The evening light stretched across the lawn, softening the edges of the day, and she let herself breathe through the strange mixture of acceptance and disappointment. Nothing explosive happened afterward. No confrontation that ended in shouting, no dramatic exit, no sudden apology. The night didn't end with resolution, it ended with clarity. Lily didn't feel guilty for asking Peter to leave. She felt something else entirely, an awareness that some people reveal themselves when they believe they have the support of others, and some relationships show their limits in the smallest exchanges. By the time she rested in bed that night, the memory of her birthday had already taken on a different shape. Not a joyful celebration, but a turning point she hadn't expected. And as she stared up at the ceiling, she realized she was finally ready to acknowledge the truth that had been unfolding long before the music ever changed tracks. Jason never expected a single email to pull him straight back into the years he tried so hard to leave behind. It arrived on a quiet afternoon, the kind where nothing feels urgent until it suddenly does. The message wasn't long, but the name in the sender line carried the weight of decades. His uncle, Alan Porter. A name he hadn't seen since the funeral. A name that always carried a low hum of unfinished business. Jason read the subject line twice before opening it, already sensing it wasn't anything simple. The message was polite, almost formal, but the request sat right in the center, impossible to miss. Alain wanted Jason to loan money to Jason's cousin, Arnold Porter. Not for an emergency, not for something personal. No. Arnold needed to repair the failing roof of the old family house. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. The same house that had been the root of so much quiet resentment, whispered arguments and strained holiday gatherings. The same house that became a dividing line between the Porters long before Jason was old enough to understand why. As Jason sat back in his chair, the words blurred for a moment, not because they were unclear, but because they carried so much history behind them. He knew this wasn't just about a roof, it was about everything that came before. Every choice someone else made, every grudge his extended family chose to cling to, and every moment they decided his father, Thomas, should be the villain in a story none of them ever wanted to tell truthfully. To understand why this email felt like a punch to the gut, Jason had to go back, years back, to the days when his grandparents, Arthur and Elaine Porter, still lived in that house. The house wasn't grand enough to be impressive, but it was large enough to feel overwhelming. Built in the 50s, filled with uneven floors, rooms added over the decades, and a constant list of things left undone. It was the kind of home that required both money and time, and neither ever seemed to be available in the right amounts. A few years before Arthur and Elaine passed, they made a decision that rippled through the family much louder than they expected. They chose to donate the house to their 3 children, Thomas, Marie, and Alain. But it wasn't an equal donation, not even close. Nearly all of the value, both sentimental and financial, was handed to Marie Keller, the daughter who stayed in that home her entire life. She cooked meals, managed errands, cared for her parents as their health declined, and kept the daily routine running even when it meant putting her own life on hold. Jason never denied that she did a lot. Everyone knew it. But the donation was designed in a way that left almost everything in her hands. Thomas and Alain were given far smaller shares, to the point where the imbalance was obvious from the first conversation. Thomas accepted it. He didn't argue about the unequal distribution. What he didn't accept, what he refused to give up, was his legally required portion of the inheritance once their parents passed. It was the one part the law protected, and the one part Marie couldn't bypass, no matter how much she insisted she deserved the whole house. Thomas warned them early on that keeping the house would be a financial strain none of them were prepared for. The place was huge, old, and full of problems that couldn't be ignored forever. Plumbing, wiring, roofing, foundational cracks, each issue more expensive than the last. Jason remembered overhearing those conversations as a teenager. His father always said the same thing. "If you keep it, you'll have to maintain it. It's not a souvenir, it's a responsibility." But Marie didn't want to hear that. Neither did Alain. The house was sentimental, irreplaceable, meaningful. That was the language they used. Nostalgia was easier than practicality, and they clung to it even when it made no sense financially. Jason never understood why they didn't listen, but over time, he realized it wasn't about logic, it was about pride. The moment Thomas insisted on his reserved portion and accepted the required payment from Marie, roughly $100,000, everything shifted. Marie accused him of being greedy. Alain acted like Thomas had personally betrayed the family legacy. Even Arnold, who was young at the time, adopted the same cold distance toward Jason's father. And from that point on, Thomas became the outsider. Not because he did anything cruel, not because he stole anything, but because he followed the law and refused to pretend the house was worth more than maintaining his own life. Jason never forgot how family gatherings changed after that. The snide remarks, the way Marie's tone sharpened anytime Thomas walked into a room, the whispers Jason caught when he passed a doorway. Over time, Thomas stopped visiting the house, partly because he was tired of the tension, partly because every visit turned into a subtle ambush of guilt. And the more he stayed away, the more they blamed him for everything that happened inside those walls. Years went by. Tension calcified into distance. Distance turned into resentment. And resentment turned into something crueler, a kind of selective memory where Marie and Alain convinced themselves that Thomas had abandoned their parents. Jason knew it wasn't true. His grandparents were in their 90s. Their decline wasn't caused by visits that didn't happen. But that didn't stop Marie from saying it, or Alain from agreeing with her, or Arnold from parroting the same stories he grew up hearing. Then came the day Jason's father found out he had lung cancer, the kind of cancer that doesn't negotiate, doesn't slow down, and doesn't give a person time to adjust. Thomas lasted 6 months. 6 difficult, exhausting months. He told his siblings what was happening, hoping they might put old bitterness aside long enough to visit him. They didn't. Not until Jason called, telling them his father had only weeks left, maybe less. Only then did they show up, and even those visits were brief, almost awkward. Jason remembered each one vividly. Marie stood in the doorway more than she sat down. Alain talked about the drive home more than he asked questions. Arnold came once, drifting around the room like he didn't want to get too close. Jason never forgot how his father looked at them, not angry, not hurt, just tired, as if he had expected nothing more. When the funeral came, they attended because it was expected, not out of closeness. Alain left early. He had a long drive, he said. Marie chatted with distant cousins more than she spoke to Jason. And when it was over, they went back to the house. Jason went back to his life, and the silence between them resumed like a familiar routine. So when the email from Alain appeared 6 months later, asking for money to repair a roof that had been neglected for over a decade, Jason felt something inside him tighten. The request wasn't shocking because of the amount, or even because it was directed at him. It was shocking because of the audacity. The house had been Marie's obsession for years. She renovated parts of it with her parents' money, built a small apartment for herself on the second floor, refused to sell it even when she couldn't afford the upkeep. Arnold, now a general practitioner, still had nothing saved. Alan, who had forgiven Marie's debt long ago, never contributed a cent toward maintenance. They all chose sentimentality over responsibility. And now they wanted Jason, whose father they iced out, whose warnings they ignored, to pick up the bill. Jason sat at his kitchen counter, reading the email again, trying to understand if he was missing something. Alain wasn't asking as a family member reaching out in humility. The tone made it sound like Jason had an obligation, like he somehow owed it to them. Like Thomas's share, the tension, the funeral, and the painful memories were irrelevant now that they needed help. He thought about Arnold. They had been close once when they were younger, before the inheritance, before the whispers, before the distance. Jason didn't dislike him, but he couldn't forget how easily Arnold fell in line behind Marie's judgments, how little effort he made to understand Thomas's position, how rarely he visited his uncle during those final months. Jason wasn't heartless. He considered helping Arnold if the situation were different, if it were for starting a medical practice or a personal emergency, or anything that felt like growth instead of patching over years of poor decisions. But helping with the house? That was different. That house was a symbol of blame, of denial, of every moment they chose to believe Marie's version of events over the truth. He imagined sending the money and realized it wouldn't bring peace. It would reopen the same cycle. They would take the loan, forget the gratitude, ignore the repayment timeline, and eventually blame him when something else went wrong. It was the same dynamic that had pushed Thomas away for years. The same dynamic Jason refused to inherit. Still, he didn't answer Alain immediately. He let the email sit, rereading it every couple of days. Sometimes he wondered if refusing made him cruel. Other times he remembered the look on his father's face during those short, awkward final visits. He thought about how Marie had used her parents' savings to build an apartment for herself, but never repaired the roof. How Alain forgave her, legally owed payment, but resented Thomas for accepting his own. How none of them took responsibility until the consequences became too heavy to ignore. He talked it over with no one. This wasn't a decision he wanted influenced. It was one he needed to feel settled about, deep down. A choice not just about money, but about breaking a pattern that had shaped his family for years. One part of him wondered what would happen if he said yes. Maybe it would smooth things over. Maybe it would give Arnold a chance to catch up financially. But a larger part of him knew the truth. The house was a bottomless pit, a sentimental anchor dragging everyone who touched it into debt and conflict. Fixing one roof wouldn't change anything. It would just delay the next crisis. Jason finally drafted his response. Not harsh, not emotional, just honest. He explained that he wasn't able to loan money for house repairs. He didn't justify it. He didn't argue. He didn't bring up the past. The message was short, clear, and final. He hovered over the send button, surprised by how steady he felt. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't bitterness. It was clarity, the kind Thomas never got the chance to express. He clicked send. Within minutes, he wondered how Alain would react. Angry? Disappointed? Cold? Maybe he would forward the message to Marie and Arnold. Maybe they would complain among themselves, rewriting the story yet again. Maybe they would blame him just as they blamed his father. Jason realized it didn't matter. A few hours later, a reply arrived, short enough to read in a single glance. And as Jason finished reading it, he understood something deeper about his father, his family, and the history tied to that house. The moment closed the chapter he never expected to end this way. Emily Parker expected a routine haircut when she walked into the salon, not the moment that would make her question how many small decisions can suddenly feel like betrayals. The shop smelled of shampoo and fresh paint, and there, by the styling stations, stood a face she had not seen in a year. Jessie Collins, back in town, and smiling as if nothing had changed. Jessie had announced the move last spring with excitement, telling clients she'd opened a salon nearly an hour away and was chasing a dream she couldn't ignore. Emily remembered the enthusiasm, the plans Jessie shared, the photo of the new space Jessie posted before she left. At the time, Emily understood and said she wished Jessie luck. She also decided that 2 hours of travel for a haircut was more than she could manage. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. Life had a rhythm, and Emily fit appointments into it. Carrie Monroe, the stylist who stayed, became that rhythm. Carrie learned Emily's hair, learned how to shape it for busy weeks, how to keep color from fading between appointments. After a couple of cuts, Emily's bookings with Carrie felt natural, not a replacement, just the way things were. Now Jessie stood nearby with the kind of smile that assumed continuity, the assumption that certain relationships remained static despite distance or time. Emily felt the smile like a nudge, and for a second she almost stepped over and hugged her. Instead, she kept moving through the salon, choosing to let the morning keep its ordinary plan. Carrie called Emily's name with the same easy tone that had called her every month for the last year. Emily walked toward that voice because it had become her appointment anchor. When she reached Carrie's station, Jessie's expression changed in a way Emily couldn't misread. The warmth in Jessie's face shifted into something else, a tightening along the jaw, a lost certainty. It was subtle and precise, a person who had arrived with an expectation and suddenly discovered that expectation was wrong. Emily sat in Carrie's chair and wrapped the cape around her shoulders, letting Carrie start in without comment. The routine of the haircut began. Combs, clips, measured motions that suggested competence and familiarity. Those motions comforted Emily, a reminder of why she had stayed with Carrie, but the presence of Jessie turned the familiar into an odd tableau. Jessie lingered near other stations, moving through the salon as if on autopilot, making tiny adjustments to her posture when Emily glanced toward her reflection. She lingered by a shelf of products and pretended to check stock. At a mirror, she arranged towels and then set them down. Each small action communicated a person struggling to reconcile surprise with expectation. Emily noticed everything without wanting to. An awareness like that shifts the feeling of an ordinary place into something charged. Carrie worked with a steadiness Emily had come to trust. The scissors moved with an economy of motion. The color application was methodical, practiced. Emily watched movement in the mirror, not because she wanted to watch herself, but because the mirror showed the room and everything in it. The stylus, the racks, the way light fell through the windows. The salon felt like a stage built from routine, and for the 2 hours of the appointment, it folded around Emily and Carrie's practiced choreography. Yet the undercurrent of the moment never left. Jessie's glances threaded through the air like a repeated question. There were no raised voices, no overt confrontation while she sat in Carrie's chair. The lack of spectacle only sharpened the situation. People in the shop adjusted, a little less confident in where they stood in that moment. A receptionist paused while flipping a booking book. Another stylist altered the order of tasks to avoid a perceived awkwardness. It's odd how the absence of drama can feel more dramatic than the spectacle itself. Emily felt the influence of that absence as pressure, small and continuous. When Carrie rinsed her hair and wrapped a towel, Emily took a moment looking at the reflection of her own profile. The haircut was precise, familiar, comfortable. It fit the schedule she kept for her life. She thought about the year past, afternoons of quick errands, evenings with friends, weekdays that always required the same efficient upkeep. The routine had not been a betrayal, it had been an accommodation. Jessie had chosen a different path, one Emily respected. Emily had chosen practicality. Choices like that rarely require announcements. But as soon as she stood, Jessie stepped closer, not blocking the door but asserting a presence. The movement was quiet, controlled. Jessie asked why Emily had not told her she'd switched stylists. Her voice did not rise. It was precise, direct, threaded with a disappointment that felt personal. She said she assumed Emily would follow her, that leaving the town didn't mean she expected the clients to stay with her, but that she had felt support from certain regulars and thought Emily was among them. Jessie's words implied a relationship that survived distance, that loyalty should have been a given rather than a question. Emily answered plainly. She said she had not followed, because 2 hours of travel for a service she needed regularly would have been impractical. She explained she had found a stylist in town who did the job well and who fit into her routine. She was careful with her tone, aware of the way things had shifted. Emily did not apologize for rearranging her life to match weekly needs. She did not offer reassurances to fix someone else's expectation. The exchange felt like a weighing of terms neither had agreed to. Jessie responded with a message in which she suggested Emily owed some explanation, that an exchange of information could have softened the moment. Jessie added that now she was back, she expected Emily to consider returning because she believed Emily had stayed with Carrie only out of convenience. The word carried a sting, convenience, and it landed in Emily's chest as an accusation dressed as observation. Emily typed back that convenience was precisely the point. People choose services that fit with life patterns. She wrote that she had never intended to wound Jessie or diminish what Jessie had done for her hair in the past. She explained that choices had been practical. She did not demand validation for the decision. She simply stated it as fact. The exchange of messages sat on the small screen like a ledger of two different perspectives. In the days that followed, Emily found herself replaying the salon's layout. A cup on a counter, the photograph of a wedding pinned on the wall, a row of chairs facing the window. Those details were anchors for the memory. She imagined Jessie arranging product shelves again, smiling at someone newer to the salon, updating the appointment book with a new face. Emily's life, meanwhile, continued its small, steady rhythms. Appointments, grocery lists, Saturday coffee with a neighbor. The routine that had felt mundane before now held a layer of complication. Carrie remained professional, careful not to pry, but she did something Emily noticed. She added small gestures of reassurance. A question about preference here, an extra section trimmed there. The gestures were subtle, not theatrical, yet they steadied Emily in a way that was practical rather than sentimental. It helped that Carrie had expertise, in a manner that made hair care feel like a task accomplished rather than a ritual. The practical work of hairdressing, in Emily's experience, had never been about moral alignment. It was about results. Jessie, for her part, began to rebuild a clientele in town. She spoke about her new salon to former colleagues and to anyone who listened, filling time with the enthusiasm that had sent her away the year before. When they crossed paths in the shop, she sometimes offered a tight smile that did not match her eyes. That mismatch lingered in Emily's memory, a reminder that everyone carries expectations that do not always align with other people's realities. Friends offered opinions when Emily described the confrontation. Some sided with Jessie, suggesting that loyalty to a person in a service industry felt like a gift worth acknowledging. Others argued that loyalty must be reciprocated by presence. If someone moves beyond a reasonable reach, clients adjust. Conversations about loyalty sat on the periphery of Emily's life like a small debate, not the kind to end relationships, but the kind that asks whether rules without agreement can be binding. The salon itself changed little. Weekdays kept their steady rhythm of appointments. The reception desk took calls. New customers arrived with phones in hand, searching for available times. Still, when Emily walked in now, a measure of calculation accompanied her steps. She chose a corner chair sometimes, shifted routines that once felt unremarkable. The experience had introduced a new awareness into a place she once considered untroubled. It was a subtle recalibration, not a grand upheaval. Months later, there were moments when Jessie and Emily exchanged brief, neutral greetings, civilities that acknowledged presence without reopening old wounds. They both continued their work in the salon space, overlapping but not reconnecting the way Jessie had assumed. The overlap made for awkward geometry at times. a series of near misses that never quite became accidents. Emily realized how many small strands weave together in a day: the trust in a service provider, the assumption of loyalty, the practicalities of time and distance. Each strand could be rearranged without anyone signing off on the new design. Emily thought about the difference between what people expect and what people decide. She considered how moving away to chase a dream felt like an imperative for one person and an abandonment for another. She held both possibilities without resolving them into a neat conclusion. Life, in these small slices, rarely pauses for an explanation. It simply evolves and asks people to adapt. In time, the intensity of that first afternoon softened. The sharp edge of Jessie's surprise blurred into a softer awareness. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but a return to functionality. Yet whenever Emily thought back, the instant when Carrie called her name and the warmth in Jessie's face collapsed into a folded expression remained vivid. It was the precise second when an assumption met a different reality, and neither had agreed to the terms. Emily did not change stylist out of malice. She had not planned to wound. She had arranged her life to fit a schedule and a set of small necessities. Jessie had not planned to feel betrayed. She had arrived with the belief that relationships carried themselves across distance. Both had acted according to their understanding of what mattered. The salon continued to host appointments, but that one afternoon remained like an unfiled letter in Emily's mind, a moment that did not resolve neatly. It marked the point where ordinary choices revealed how differently people interpret the same actions, and where a small decision about a haircut turned into a larger question of expectations and belonging. The memory of Jessie's expression when she realized Emily had chosen otherwise lingered like an unfinished sentence that neither of them could finish for each other. Lily Hartman didn't expect a single text message to undo months of careful planning, but that was how it always seemed to go in her life. Trouble had a way of finding her, even when she tried to outrun it. She had spent nearly a year rebuilding her savings, protecting every spare dollar, and guarding her plans like something fragile that could shatter with one wrong move. By the time November rolled around, she felt closer to her dream than ever. A small house, just big enough for her and the life she wanted to build. Lily had never been the type to ask for much. Her apartment was small, a one-bedroom place tucked above an old bakery in a quiet part of town. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. The walls were thin and the plumbing groaned at night, but it was hers, paid for with long hours at work, and a determination that grew sharper after every setback. She kept her life simple so she could put everything she had into her savings. Every time she transferred money into her housing fund, she imagined the front door of her future home, the one she hoped to walk through by her next birthday. That dream meant more to her than she ever admitted out loud. It wasn't just about a building or a mortgage. It was about stability, independence, and the feeling of finally standing on solid ground after years of chaos. Chaos usually came in the form of her family, especially her mother, Carol Hartman, who had a talent for making problems and an even greater talent for making them someone else's responsibility. Lily had spent years caught in that responsibility. When she was younger, she covered late fees, overdue bills, bounce check penalties, and the kind of debts her mother insisted she would pay back, but never did. The pattern repeated constantly. Carol would fall behind, panic, reach out, and Lily would step in because she couldn't stomach watching everything collapse again. She convinced herself each time that it would be the last time, but it never was. When Lily finally walked away from that cycle, it wasn't a dramatic moment. It was quiet, like a door closing softly. She reached a point where she realized she couldn't save her mother without losing herself, and so she stopped trying. Carol didn't take it well. The distance between them grew into a gap that never closed again. By the time years passed, they barely spoke at all. According to Carol, Lily had abandoned her. According to Lily, she'd finally learned to protect herself. The only person Lily stayed connected to was her younger sister, Jenna Hartman. Jenna was the mediator of the family, the kind of person who wanted everyone to get along even when it was impossible. Lily loved her, but their relationship had always been uneven. Jenna had a way of minimizing things, smoothing over tension instead of facing it directly. Lily didn't blame her. They were raised in the same environment. They just learned different ways to survive it. One chilly afternoon, while Lily was reviewing her monthly budget at her tiny kitchen table, her phone lit up with a message from Jenna. At first glance, it looked normal. Jenna often texted her at random times, mostly to share small updates or check in. But this message was different. "Hey," Jenna wrote. "Can I borrow some money? Just for a couple weeks. It's an emergency at the house." Lily leaned back in her chair and stared at the message. The word emergency always made her uneasy. It reminded her too much of the years when every problem was dropped in her lap. She typed, erased, and typed again before finally sending a reply asking what was going on. Jenna responded quickly, but her answer felt vague. Something about repairs, something about timing. Nothing that gave Lily enough to really understand the situation. She asked how much her sister needed, and when the number arrived on the screen, Lily felt her stomach tighten. It wasn't a small amount. It wasn't something she could easily replace. It was part of her house fund, the fund she had guarded so carefully. She told Jenna the truth. She didn't have spare cash. She was living paycheck to paycheck, saving for something important, and she couldn't afford to fall behind. For a moment, she thought that would be the end of the conversation. But Jenna sent another message, longer this time. She said she understood, but promised she would pay Lily back in 2 weeks. She insisted she wouldn't let her down. She reminded Lily of all the times they had been there for each other. She used the kind of gentle persuasion that always made it hard for Lily to say no. Lily stared at her budget again, feeling the weight of the decision in her chest. She wanted to keep every cent where it was, but she also didn't want to be the sister who said no in a moment of supposed crisis. She knew she had a tendency to give in, to avoid conflict even when she shouldn't, but part of her hoped that this time would be different, so she agreed. She transferred the money, sent a short message telling Jenna to keep her posted, and tried to let it go. But the uneasiness lingered over the next several days. Something about the situation felt off, like a detail was missing, or like the truth was tucked just out of sight. She pushed the feeling aside because she couldn't do anything about it now. The money was already gone. A week later, Lily learned the truth without even trying to find it. The message came from a distant cousin who reached out about something unrelated, and in the middle of the conversation, Lily saw a sentence that made everything tilt. "Your mom is really stressed. Jenna said she got some help recently, so hopefully things settle." Lily read the line again, slower this time, hoping she misunderstood. But no matter how she interpreted it, the meaning was the same. The money she sent wasn't for Jenna. It was for Carol. The person who hadn't spoken to Lily in years, except to criticize or blame her. The person who told extended family that Lily abandoned her. The person Lily had spent years trying to escape financially. The realization struck hard, but not in the loud way she expected. It felt more like the quiet confirmation of a fear she already carried. Lily waited 2 hours before texting Jenna, trying to cool the heat in her thoughts so she wouldn't say something she regretted. But when she finally messaged her sister, the answer arrived with little hesitation. "Yeah, it was for Mom," Jenna wrote, "but I didn't want to tell you right away because I knew you'd say no." Lily stared at the words, unable to move for a moment. It wasn't just the lie. It wasn't just the manipulation. It was the casual way Jenna admitted it, as if the choice had been obvious, as if Lily's boundaries didn't matter at all. Lily asked why she wasn't told the truth from the start, and Jenna replied with a justification that made Lily's skin crawl. "Mom needed help," Jenna wrote, "and you're doing fine. You could spare it." Lily closed her eyes and breathed slowly. She typed a message telling Jenna she needed the money back, as soon as possible. No negotiations. The reply came quickly, but this time it was sharp. Seriously, Jenna wrote. Mom is drowning. You know that. She's going through so much. Can't you have a little compassion? You should treat this like helping the family, not a loan. Lily felt a heaviness settle inside her chest. She wrote back, reminding Jenna that she had spent years helping Carol, years paying off debts that seemed endless, years sacrificing her own stability just to keep someone else afloat. She said she couldn't do it anymore. She said the money had been for a specific purpose and she needed it returned. Jenna didn't budge. In fact, she pushed harder. She told Lily that their mother needed support, that Lily was being cold, selfish, ungrateful for everything Carol had done for them growing up. She said Lily had turned into a bad daughter. Then she added something that hit harder than the rest. You're a bad sister too, Jenna wrote. Asking for the money back after everything going on is disgusting. Lily read the message slowly, feeling something inside her unravel. She couldn't understand how her choice to protect herself had turned into this. She couldn't understand why the family always expected her to be the one who sacrificed everything. She couldn't understand how her mother's history of debts and manipulation had become her responsibility again through Jenna's deception. For the rest of the night, she sat in her small apartment, replaying the conversation over and over. She thought about the birthday deadline she had set for herself. She thought about the house she wanted, the one she could almost picture. She thought about the years she spent cleaning up problems she didn't create, and she thought about how quickly one lie had threatened to pull her back into the life she fought so hard to escape. In the days that followed, Lily tried to stay calm. She sent reminders to Jenna. She stayed polite even when she wanted to scream. She attempted to find middle ground, gently reminding her sister that she didn't have extra money lying around. Jenna ignored some messages, responded curtly to others, and never once apologized for lying. Carol didn't reach out at all, but Lily hadn't expected her to. The silence between them grew heavier. For the first time in months, Lily's plans felt fragile again. She wondered if she had done something wrong. She wondered if helping family was supposed to be an obligation, even when it came at her expense. She wondered if protecting herself made her the villain in their eyes. But she also knew something else. She knew she needed boundaries, even if no one else respected them. She knew she couldn't keep repeating the same patterns. She knew this moment, unfair as it was, showed her exactly where she stood in her family's hierarchy. Lily tried once more to reach Jenna. She asked if they could talk in person, hoping a calm conversation would help untangle everything. But Jenna declined, saying she didn't want to deal with Lily's guilt trips. That sentence alone felt like a door closing. Lily realized that the money wasn't the only loss. She was watching her relationship with her sister Frey in real time. The betrayal felt sharper coming from Jenna than it ever had from Carol, because Jenna had always been the softer one, the one who understood, the one Lily thought she could trust. As the days stretched into weeks, Lily stopped waiting for a repayment she knew wasn't coming. She focused on rebuilding her budget, adjusting her goals, and finding ways to keep moving forward. She didn't cut Jenna off, but the conversations grew shorter, thinner, lacking the warmth they once had. Then one afternoon, after nearly a month of strained silence, Lily received a message she didn't expect. It came from Jenna again, but the tone was different this time. The words were careful, heavy, as if something significant had changed on her end. Lily opened the message slowly, bracing herself. And as she read the first sentence, everything around her seemed to shift, pulling her into a moment she could feel deep in her bones. What came next would force her to confront everything she thought she knew about her family, her boundaries, and the cost of protecting her own future. She knew the situation wasn't over. Not yet. And she was right. That message was only the beginning of what unfolded next, and it carried consequences Lily never imagined she would have to face. She stared at the final line on the screen, feeling the weight of its meaning settle over her with a quiet intensity that told her nothing would be the same after this. The next part of the story pushed everything into territory she never expected. cracking open truths that had been hidden for years. She breathed in slowly, steadying herself as she prepared to respond, knowing that whatever she said would shape everything that came after. When she finally exhaled, she understood something clearly. Her world had already shifted, and what waited beyond that moment would not let her return to the life she knew before. Lily Carter never expected a favor to rearrange the way her family moved through the house, but when her brother returned with his family, the balance shifted in a single week. What began as a temporary need became a steady pressure, one that tested old assumptions about who did what and why. Lily had a life that relied on irregular hours and small certainties. She had graduated and taken a job at the city hospital, the kind of work that asked her to be available at odd times. Her schedule was a patchwork of overnight shifts, early morning starts, and long stretches that left sleep fragmented. At home, her mother, Diane Carter, ran a small consulting business and kept the house upright. Diane owned the family home outright, and Lily paid modest rent while taking on most of the domestic tasks. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. Their balance cracked the afternoon Erin Bennett arrived with Rose Bennett and their daughter Emily Bennett, suitcases in hand, and faces drained from a failed plan. Their newly purchased house had revealed problems. Plumbing refused to cooperate, a shower barely ran, heating faltered. Contractors estimated weeks. Renting elsewhere was unaffordable. Moving back home was the only option. At first, the house absorbed them. Emily brought a small energy that softened edges. Erin left at dawn for work, and Rose arranged closets and toys. Lily moved through shifts, catching brief naps and returning with reserved patience. Everyone rehearsed the idea that it would be temporary. 3 days in, Rose shifted the tone. In a narrow hallway, she asked Lily if she could take Emily to school each morning. The school required drop-off at 8. The neighbor who had driven Emily was no longer available. Erin's hours and the family's single car tightened options. Rose framed the request with quiet need. Lily answered honestly. Her work sometimes kept her through the early hours. Some shifts ended at 9 or 10. Other days required her to be at the hospital before sunrise. Committing to a daily school run would force changes that reduced shifts and income. She explained requesting limited availability usually meant fewer hours. Rose suggested Lily ask her manager anyway. Lily declined. Rose's face folded between disappointment and expectation. When Lily suggested Rose walk Emily, the route was 15 minutes along flat sidewalks. Rose shook her head and said it was too far for a young child. The conversation seemed over, but that evening Diane told Lily Rose had been upset and had spoken to her. Diane suggested Lily could help when possible. Lily restated constraints. Diane said she understood, but the look in her eyes held a gentle plea that felt like a small judgment. The next morning, Erin stopped Lily in the kitchen and asked why she would not do a small favor the neighbor had handled. He spoke of family and proximity. Lily tried to explain. He walked away with a tight expression. Where conversation had been polite, it narrowed. Small incidents multiplied. Rose's voice shortened when Lily entered a room. Erin's replies became minimal. Diane attempted neutral topics that landed like fragile masks. Emily carried on with drawings and routines, unaware the adults were recalculating expectations. Lily checked the walking route during a break, seeking reassurance she had been reasonable. 15 minutes with safe sidewalks. She recalled childhood walks her mother once made for her. The logic seemed plain. Still, refusing the request had become proof of choice, not limitation. Neighbors began offering sympathetic comments to Rose and Erin about the repairs, and in casual exchanges, the situation slowly changed shape. A neighbor, Jenna Price, mentioned the situation in passing to Diane with the assumption that living under one roof meant shared favors. The retellings returned to the house altered. Lily kept a quiet account of her contributions. Errands run, meals prepared, the household functioning despite irregular sleep. The internal ledger became a private map against a growing sense of being measured unfairly. A short note slipped under her door one morning. "Why can't you help with the school?" The blunt sentence landed heavier than a spoken complaint. Lily folded the note into a pocket and continued, but the note followed her. Dinner became practiced civility. Diane set plates and asked about contractors. Rose prepared lunches each morning and did not announce her new routine. Erin juggled calls and sometimes offered apologies that never dug into solutions. Lily guarded responses. She helped when she could but refused to rearrange work. That refusal reshaped how family members spoke about one another. Small omissions accrued into reputations. The house measured contributions like ledger entries floating between rooms. At the hospital, Lily focused on tasks with clear starts and ends. At home, a different labor required emotional calibration. She reviewed schedules and remembered nights she had worked. Memory acted as context, private evidence that could not always convince others. Neighbors' retellings became background. An offhand remark to a neighbor opened gossip that returned altered. The situation now made Lily appear unhelpful. One evening, Diane tried a gentler tactic over tea, speaking about boundaries and temporary burdens. Her words were meant to soothe, but Lily felt expectation folded into them. Diane did not accuse, but framed a suggestion that landed as if Lily's help was the missing piece. In private, Lily compared efforts. She listed tasks she had taken on: extra laundry, scheduling a repair appointment, sorting the kitchen, paying for a delivery when a contractor changed dates. She held the list like a map of what she could reasonably do without sacrificing the job that paid the bills. Tensions hardened into rituals, mornings of quiet adjustment, shortened greetings, chores done with less conversation. Rose's walk to school became proof she could manage, not an acknowledgement of shared strain. Erin's fatigue read as impatience. Diane's small reconciliations landed as patches, not healing. A neighbor's sympathetic assumption that proximity implied availability felt like a public verdict. Lily imagined longer stretches of this arrangement and realized the household might not return to its former ease. That realization required clarity, not a rehearsed explanation. When the decisive moment came, it arrived as a plain question at the kitchen table. Diane asked whether Lily could commit to helping more regularly, phrased as care and practicality, but carrying consequence. The question required more than a list of excuses. Lily answered with facts: the schedule, the cost of fewer shifts, the unpredictability of hospital work. She stated what she could do and what she could not, calm and firm. She did not seek vindication. She offered possibilities that would not jeopardize income. What followed was not an explosive confrontation, but a rearrangement of positions. Erin responded with a controlled frustration about fairness. Rose let a sharp remark slip that tasted of expectation unmet. Diane's face tightened with the difficulty of balancing empathy and fairness. Emily sat at the table tracing patterns on a placemat, unaware adults were shifting roles. The remainder of the week slid into altered rhythms. Rose continued walking Emily to school, but the act no longer read simply as logistics. It read as resolve. Erin kept a lower profile at home, offering brief apologies that never dug into solutions. Diane attempted small acts of reconciliation: extra coffee on the counter, offers to run errands, but those acts landed as stitches, not healing. Lily kept returning to work and to lists. She did not want spectacle. She wanted the practical terms of living together understood without turning scheduling bounds into tests of character. Repairs proceeded at the other house in fits and starts, and life in the family house settled into a new quiet. In the days that followed, Lily found herself cataloging moments with a new attention. She watched Emily tape a crayon drawing to the refrigerator and imagined the small hands that had folded it, the mornings filled with cereal bowls and school newsletters, and the evenings where toys compiled like small weather around the living room. She made a note of the nights she had stayed up to wash towels left in damp heaps, the time she had called a repairman because a sink faucet had started leaking, the extra grocery run she had taken when a delivery date shifted. A neighbor mentioned the situation to another neighbor, and the line of retelling acquired a momentum of its own. Jenna Price, who walked her dog most mornings, told a friend that the Bennetts were stretched thin, and the neighbor relayed that fact with an assumption that Lily's refusal had been flat. The version returned through porch conversations and eventually reached Diane, who then had to reconcile a private conversation with a public one. It was a reminder that small families live inside a larger network of opinion. Lily's shifts at the hospital did not soften. She continued to work irregular hours, making clinical decisions and keeping patients safe, compartmentalizing that responsibility from household politics. She found focus in precise routines, checking charts, coordinating meds, noting discharge times. Those routines were a stabilizing counterpoint to the shifting domestic landscape. At home, she moved like someone balancing plates, careful not to let one drop. Rose and Aaron navigated contractors and payment schedules with a practical focus that often read as briskness. They spoke about timelines and tradespeople in clipped sentences that implied the repairs would end and normalcy would return. Yet every time they discussed timelines, a new delay appeared. A part rescheduled, a contractor postponed. Each delay extended the temporary arrangement and hardened the decisions made in response. Diane suggested a family meeting to set expectations. She wanted to lay out logistics and avoid misunderstandings. The meeting became a practical checklist. Who would handle laundry on certain days, trash responsibilities, use of shared spaces? Lily prepared her contributions and reiterated her limits. She offered specific mornings that matched her rota, not a blanket promise. Aaron accepted the practical list, but Rose's expression signaled the arrangement was still unsatisfying. Emily, oblivious to the growing complexities, continued to stage small dramas on the living room rug, building towers of blocks and insisting a stuffed animal had a particular name. She left drawings in unexpected places, a picture tucked into a textbook, a coloring page on a chair, and those drawings became quiet punctuation marks in the day. Lily kept a few in a drawer for when rooms went quiet, a private repository of moments untouched by argument. As the weeks passed, the household adapted to an uneasy choreography. Rose's walk to school became routine and almost ceremonial, a proof of endurance rather than a concession. Aaron scheduled his workday to minimize friction at home, and Diane oscillated between practical advice and gentle entreaties for compromise. Lily maintained boundaries while contributing in ways that matched the limits she had described. The way neighbors framed the situation remained stubborn. In porch conversations and grocery line remarks, the narrative simplified into a version where Lily's refusal was the centerpiece. That simplification influenced interactions inside the house and turned private logistics into public judgments. Standing on the back steps one evening, Lily watched Emily chase a last stray leaf and understood that the dispute had become as much about identity as logistics. Family expectations, neighbors' whispers, and practical constraints had braided together into a single thread that pulled taut whenever mornings were discussed. She felt no triumph at being right. She felt the slow responsibility of setting boundaries inside the place where she belonged. That week ended with routines that felt new and unsteady. Lily moved through them with practiced focus, knowing that the arrangement had changed how they all measured each other. She kept a quiet ledger of work and care and held her limits without apology. A final ordinary morning arrived, and they moved through familiar motions, but the space between them had become a permanent part of the house. Lena Brooks moved into the little house expecting a pause in the noise of her life. Instead, she found a path that kept crossing through the edges of her days. The place had everything she wanted on paper: a modest yard, a practical back driveway, a quiet block, but the reality arrived with a shared side gate and a stream of people who treated that gate as if it belonged to anyone who needed a shortcut. That small, ordinary fact became the problem at the heart of everything that followed. At first, the crossings were incidental. A neighbor cutting a corner to get to the corner store, a shopper saving 30 seconds, a parent steering a stroller through instead of walking the long way around. 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. Lena noticed them because she lived with a couch beside the front window, and the house had the odd intimacy of small homes. The yard was close enough to feel like a room. Feet on grass felt like movement inside her house. She tried to be patient. She told herself the neighbors meant no harm, that people had always made practical choices, that being new made her sensitive to small shifts. Yet the minor slights multiplied. A passerby who paused long enough to look into the living room, a cart brushing a planted edge, an unreturned nod that made her feel less visible than the property itself. Jason Miller, her detached neighbor, treated the gate like a piece of neighborhood equipment. He pinned a practical welcome to the daily use of the space. He parked his car in the back, moved through, waved a brief hello, and kept his life modular. Jason had been there longer, understood the block's routines, and he did not see a problem where Lena kept feeling one. His calm made ownership by complaint feel excessive. Lena counted that as a restraint on escalation, but also as a reminder that any change would need his cooperation. A lock would inconvenience Jason. A sign might be ignored. Words could be given and then forgotten. The issue focused on Tessa Hayes and her small son, Liam. Tessa moved through the yard with a kind of ease that read like habit. Grocery bag in one hand, Liam tugging at her sleeve, steps set in the path of a habit she had hardly questioned. She did not make eye contact when she crossed, and she traversed the grass the way someone walks through an old habit. Lena felt exposed in ways she had not anticipated. What should have been a private front yard became, through repeated crossings, something like public property. After a while, the crossings felt personal even when they were likely thoughtless. One afternoon, Lena stepped out and asked Tessa if she would use the sidewalk instead of cutting through the garden. The request was quiet and simple, intentionally neutral. Tessa's answer arrived with a shrug that suggested history. "People have always used this path," she said, as if tradition settled the question. She promised, with a tone that was more convenience than contrition, that she would avoid the lawn in future. Lena took the promise and folded it into relief. The relief lasted only until the next day, when Lena watched from the window and saw Tessa pushing Liam through the gate again, moving as if the conversation had never happened. That repetition felt like an erasure of the ask. Lena imagined a tiny map drawn across her yard. Footsteps, quick lines, routes mapped by habit rather than permission. She began to think in practical ways. A key lock shared with Jason, a printed note on the gate, knocking on doors to explain how her presence made the shortcut feel invasive. Each option seemed heavy in different ways. A lock would alter a neighborly rhythm. A sign could be dismissed as a paper promise. Door-to-door conversation could generate awkwardness with strangers who had a history on the street. Instead of rushing, Lena started small. She spoke with Jason, who suggested a modest solution. A polite note on the gate explaining that the garden was private, and asking neighbors to use the sidewalk where possible. Jason preferred a community-minded request to a mechanical lock. Lena liked the idea in theory and left the handwritten note above the latch with careful wording. For a few days it worked as a social experiment. Some people glanced and went the longer way, others continued to choose convenience. Patterns, she learned, do not respond instantly to paper. That patchwork of responses revealed neighborhood habits as social weather. Some mornings the path was almost empty. Other afternoons it looked like a line. Lena learned the timing of people and faces. She noticed that June Moran, who once explained she was rushing for a prescription, changed routes and began lifting a small hand in acknowledgement when she passed. Mrs. Harper, a retired teacher who kept a tidy mailbox and an eye on the block, said the note needed a personal line, a sentence explaining that Lena was new and valued privacy. She offered to help drop copies at a few houses. Small acts like this tilted more people's steps. Then there were those who shrugged. Eric Stanton, a neighbor with a quick laugh and the ability to make anything sound like folklore, joked that the shortcut had been there long before Lena. His laughter let others treat the shortcut as a tradition rather than a boundary. That reaction stung because it turned a personal request into a measure of who could claim the street as their commons. Lena found herself negotiating not just habits, but narratives. Was the path an inherited right for the neighborhood, or a trespass across someone else's cultivated space? She tried another route, tending the lawn so it read as cared for rather than a pass-through. She planted a row of bulbs and adjusted the mailbox, small visual cues that suggested a human presence and a degree of ownership that might coax respect. The bulbs would not stop crossing, but they changed the way the space felt both to Lena and to those who passed. She found comfort in small domestic acts that did not require confrontation. Neighbors who responded positively made a difference. June's smile mattered. A delivery driver began leaving packages on the porch instead of blocking the path. Jason pitched in by replacing a loose hinge and offering to keep the gate latched if Lena wanted. Those supportive gestures made the neighborhood feel negotiable rather than fixed. But the pattern of habitual crossings remained, as did Tessa's steady presence in it. Lena also practiced different ways to speak. She learned to ask in a tone that was direct without being accusatory, to offer quick reasons that didn't require argument, to let some requests land without demanding instant agreement. Some interactions were simple and civil. A neighbor paused, read the note, and offered a small apology, a human recalibration in a moment. Others were more porous. Tessa's crossings, in particular, kept returning as proof that words can be ignored without overt hostility. A small public moment crystallized the tension. A comment passed among a group that Lena was oversensitive and that people in that neighborhood had always taken the shortcut. The remark spread and felt like a public measure of her right to insist on the private use of her yard. Jason stepped forward to steady the conversation, urging neighbors to treat simple requests seriously and to show the ordinary civility that kept small communities functioning. His words did not settle everything, but they shifted the tone away from mockery and back toward practical courtesy. In time, the issue morphed into a neighborhood topic. Mrs. Harper hosted an informal sidewalk conversation where a handful of residents stood and discussed the note, the reasons for crossing, and the invisible lines that existed on the block. Some left convinced, others did not. The meeting did not supply a definitive verdict. Instead, it made the problem communal, changing it from a private irritation into a shared question about how people map daily life. There were moments of mundane humanity, too. A young father apologized about a stroller and adjusted his route. A woman with an elderly parent accepted the note and altered her path with visible effort. Those instances were small repairs to the social fabric. Lena stored them as evidence that change was possible when people were asked honestly and kindly. But the crossings kept happening. Tessa's movements became a steady reminder that some routines resist polite requests. Sometimes her face registered impatience, sometimes neutrality. Lena could not tell whether Tessa's repetition was stubbornness, forgetfulness, or the inertia of habit. Each pass widened the emotional distance between a neighbor and a newcomer who sought only a modest measure of privacy. The friction reached a quiet flash when a neighbor, speaking to a group, called Lena oversensitive. The remark spread across porches and lawns, and Lena felt the exposure of being judged for asking that people not use a private garden as a shortcut. The exchange left a residue that took a few days of neighborly courtesies to dissipate. Jason's steady presence and practical comments helped rebalance the tone, but the memory of the public doubt remained. Lena kept adjusting tactics. She rewrote the note to avoid any tone that could be read as aggressive, added a line that asked for simple neighborliness rather than issuing demands, and left copies at a few doors so people could understand who she was and why she had moved in. She watched to see whether the directness of a signed note, with her name and a short request, would shift the pattern more than a paper pinned to a gate. The change was partial. Some neighbors adjusted, Others continued. The yard became a patchwork of small agreements and quiet refusals. Lena found a new patience for the slow work of altering a rhythm that had likely been in place for years. She also recognized that some disputes do not resolve neatly. They settle into a pattern of compromise or persist as small thorns in daily life. Then, one late afternoon under a sky that had gone the color of pewter, Lena rewrote the note yet again, tightened the language to friendly clarity, and walked it down the path toward the gate. She saw Tessa approaching with Liam close at hand and stepped forward without drama. She offered the note and asked, simply, that they use the sidewalk when possible. Tessa accepted the page, glanced at it, folded it, and moved through the gate as if the paper had been a small token rather than a boundary. She walked on with Liam, and the gate closed behind them. Lena stood on the path, the folded note in her palm, and felt the measure of the ordinary act. People would move through, some would change, some would not. The day passed into evening, and the street resumed its patterns, and Lena understood that the next crossing would carry with it a decision she had not yet made. Thanks for watching Story Frame. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more updates. See you in the next video.